I just let it coast all the way up the curb into the field in the grass. I got out, threw the keys at it, and walked away. Believe it or not, there was a time before the car wizard was the car wizard that didn't have the skills necessary to keep a car going or to fix it properly. And there was probably a handful, 10 cars or more, that I have insanely just abandoned or did really crazy things with them because I didn't have the money, I didn't have the skills, or there just wasn't the options there for me. And as Mrs. Wizard could attest, I'm very impatient. I just don't have time for BS. I don't have time for games. Sometimes I can make very rash judgments. This is before Mrs. Wizard. This is before the car wizard. Right in the military or right after the military, some of the things that really crazy that I did with automobiles. The first car I will talk about is a 1987 Chrysler Fifth Avenue. It had the 318 V8. This is the first years that they were trying to do electronic ignition. It had a little spark control module on the air filter on the side, bolted on the side. And I had just gotten out of the military. This was my ride. This is what I was cruising around in. And it would just stall. It would die. At that time in my life, I had a basic understanding of mechanics, but not so much about automotive electronics with cars. And I was thinking, why was this doing this? I don't understand. Is there something wrong with the distributor or this or that? I didn't know what was going on. I got so upset. I removed all the electronics off the vehicle. I went to a local parts store and got the old mechanical style parts off of like a 70s Dodge Duster out of a 318, the distributor, the carburetor, all the parts. It bolted right on and it worked. But even then, it had other engine issues, and I don't even understand at the time what was wrong with it. But I got so upset with it that I sold it to a friend, and it's like, I'll give you $100 for it. And I happened to have the title in the glove box, and it was really stupid because now I look back on it, it was probably nothing serious wrong with it. I lost the car for $100 just because I was tired of it. Now as we go along with the rest of these cars, it gets worse. That's just the beginning, guys. This next one is not so much anything went wrong with the car. It was again some more of my childish impatience. This is when I was in high school. I had a 1987 Ford Escort that my parents had handed down to me. I thought, this is great. I'm going on 15 years old. I have my own car now. And I enjoyed it for a little while. And since I was still learning how to run my finances, my mom was showing me. I'd get my paychecks. She would just say, you can't just go blow all your money. You got to put away for this and put away for that. You got gas money, tags, insurance, all these different things. And at this time, the minimum wage was $4.25. I might have been making $5 an hour, so my paychecks were a couple $100 at best, maybe 2 or 3. And my mom would go through and divvy up everything that should be put away for things coming up, expenses, which she was doing right on her part. But it would leave me with $50 or maybe $75, and the rest is put away for whatever expenses coming up. After about a month or two of that, I got really upset. I told my mom, I said, I'm done. I'll walk to work. I'll ride a bike. It's only 6 miles. I'm working hard. I'm earning these paychecks. I only get to keep just a small little piece of it. My money is literally lit on fire just to be able to be allowed to drive this car. I said, sell it, get it out of here. I don't want it. She's like, you want to get rid of your car? People usually dream of having a car at this age. You just want to dump it? Yeah. And I did. They sold it. They kept the money, whatever. It was truly their car, even though it was handed down to me. But that still baffles my parents even today. For the next 2 or 3 years, I rode a bike to work. I refused for my money to just be burned up, just to be allowed to even drive a car. I look back at it now, that was stupid on my part, but it was more of my impatience kicking in. I was like, I don't like this. This car is basically controlling my life, and I don't like it. It was a good car. There was nothing wrong with it. And I dumped it because I didn't like seeing my money go away towards it. So that was a life skill that I learned from all that experience, that yes, in order to live in the world today, when you get a paycheck, you don't get to keep all of it. It goes out to different things. But at the time, I wasn't accepting it. As crazy that is, there's more to come yet. The next one's a 1984 VW Rabbit, and it was powder blue. I just got out of the military. This is probably after the Fifth Avenue. I was with a woman at this time, and before Mrs. Wizard, obviously. It had been giving me fits. It would just stall on the highway. I know now that the fuel pump was dying. That's all it was. But at the time, it would stall. I would coast it into a gas station or whatever. I would open the hood, and there was this cylindrical item. I would tap on it, knock on it. It would start working again. So I drove another few days or a week or whatever. It would stall again. And one day, I was about 1.5 or 2 miles from my parents' house. I wasn't living with them, but I was really close to them when this happened. It stalled on me for probably the 50th time. I just had enough. I was having a bad week. Things were going well. I coasted it into a gas station. I opened the hood. I don't know, it was rage. I just closed it again. I went inside. Obviously, this was before smartphones that were really prevalent. I went inside. I said, what's the phone number to a local junkyard around here? Again, I happened to have the title in the glove box. I don't know why I kept them there, but I did. They gave me the phone number, and I called, and I said, come get this car. I'm done. So, okay, well, where are you at? And they came and showed up with a tow truck, and the guy showed up. He goes, that's a nice-looking little VW. Are you sure you want to do this? I just handed him the title. I said, make this thing go away. I'm done. Okay, they loaded it up. They gave me $50 for it, and I walked 1.5 miles home. I walked in the door, and my mom goes, where's your car? I said, in the junkyard. She's like, that was stupid. Well, I'm done with it. I don't know what it's going to take to fix it, and I don't want to fix it. I'll get paid next week, and I'll go buy another car. That one is gone. And that's eventually what happened. I went and got another car. But I had impatience on that car so bad, it probably was a $100 item. I could have been back on the road, and I dumped the whole car. The next one is a 1979 Chevrolet Camaro. It was actually in pretty decent condition. I was in the Army at the time, and this was my car. I went rip-roaring around in, doing burnouts, doing crazy stuff. It didn't have too many mechanical problems. Since it was an earlier type of a car, I was able to fix most everything on it. There was no electronics or anything crazy on it. And I got behind on my bills, and things were going bad with money. Most soldiers that are in the military, their first few years, their finances are a wreck. It's just, you're learning. You're learning life. You're on your own. It was a good car. It lasted me a couple years. And one day, I got behind on my bills, and I was like, I just don't even want this thing anymore. It's just taking so much money. I went to the place I bought it to see what we could do. I still owed them money on it. And the guy was like, well, you signed this paperwork. You're supposed to pay your bill until it's paid off. And just so happens someone walked up and said, how much is that Camaro? And the guy was like, $2,500. If this guy will buy it, I'll let you off the hook. And he bought it, and I got a ride home with my friend. Just abandon it. Now, those cars are going for 25 and 30 grand when they're in good condition. And I look back and I was like, that was so dumb. I should have kept that car. There's a period in my life, probably as I joined the military to a few years afterwards. I don't know. I think I'd lost my way or something. I was just really impatient and really crazy about those types of things. When something rubbed me the wrong way, I'm done. The next one's a 1993 Pontiac Grand Prix. And this is probably 6 months or a year before I met Mrs. Wizard. It had some issues, some engine issues. It also was a car that had no title. I was driving it with no insurance. It really had no value. It had, I think at the time, if I think back on it, the clutch was going out and the engine probably had a blown head gasket or something. It was really not a great car, but it was getting me by at the time. And I went to work several times in it, probably for about a week or two, and it was just giving me trouble. It was overheating. It would take a lot to get it going because the clutch was acting up. And it's not a very long story on this one, but one day I was coming home from work. It was acting up, cutting out, probably was overheating to holy hell and back, who knows. But I was by a field, which is like an off-ramp off the highway, and I just let it coast all the way up the curb into the field, in the grass. I got out, threw the keys at it, and walked away. Said, I'm done. I don't know what's wrong with this thing, and I don't even care. And I walked home. My apartment was only a mile away, so that was the end of that car. Just wait, there's more. This is one probably a year after I'd been out of the military. I had a 94 F-150 that I bought at a buy here, pay here lot. My dad actually had co-signed on the loan for me, and it was a good little truck. It had a 302 and an E4OD transmission, and it did okay, it did great, until one day the transmission went out. There was no way I had, at the time, $1,400 to get it rebuilt or whatever. I only had 2 more payments to go, and it would have been paid off. I took it to the lot where I bought it, and they said, well, only thing we can do is send it to auction, and whatever we make off of it, you'll pay off your loan. But you only have 2 payments left. Are you sure you want to do this? I said, well, I can't afford to fix it, and my parents aren't, I don't want to ask them for money for it, so here you go. They sent it to auction. They got just enough to cover the rest of the loan. I was without a car again. It was really stupid because there was invested equity. Even though it had a blown transmission, it was a good truck. I got it fixed and had almost paid off truck. So as you guys are probably getting, at that stage in my life, my patience was that of a gnat. Very small. And the last one is when I was actually married to Mrs. Wizard. We had a 2001 Nissan Pathfinder. I was just starting to get into my stride, learning mechanics and doing things, but it had a death wobble to it at about 60 or 70. I tried everything at that time that I knew I could do to try and fix it. This is probably 18 years ago. Put control arms on it. I put steering rack, everything you could think of. Now I look back, hindsight, it was the rear axle, the trailing arm bushings were bad, and it was just shaking the whole car. It was a common issue with them. But after putting so much money into it, me and Mrs. Wizard just took it in and traded it in. It was actually would have been a really good vehicle if I could have just fixed 2 $40 bushings and put a little bit more time into it and invested a little bit more, I guess, deep diving into the problem. We just got rid of it. And now that I look back and I'm scrolling through Facebook Marketplace and I see these Pathfinders for sale, and it's like, that would have been a really good vehicle. I don't know, why couldn't I find out what was wrong with it? I could today in 10 minutes find out what's wrong, but that's a whole long list of really crazy incidents, most of them before I was married to Mrs. Wizard, of cars that could have been fixed or things that could have been a better scenario had I had more patience.
Today's video is brought to you by Somo. Sotheby's Motorsport is one of the fastest growing online auction marketplaces for collector cars and exotic cars. I've sold several of my personal cars on Somo and had great experiences every time. I sold my GTC4 Lusso, a 1976 Rolls-Royce, and a 6-wheeled Range Rover, and all of the transactions went really smoothly. From submitting the car all the way through the auction to the final bids and everything else that you want, they managed everything to make sure that the auction went as perfectly as it possibly could. They talked to me, they talked to the bidders, and everything worked out wonderfully. I know that you'll love them as well. So whether you're looking to buy a car or sell a car, check them out now at the link in the description below and find your next car on Somo.